Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to My Deep Guide. In today's video I am going to be checking out a computer screen which is called Eazeye, and that's not just any computer screen, it's a little bit different. It's not an e-ink screen, it's not a reflective LCD screen, it's actually a natural wide range LED transmittant type of a screen. So it's designed to minimize the negative effects of the harmful blue light and the narrow bandwidth of the traditional LED cells that are used in traditional LED and LCD panels. And also it lowers the consumption. It manages to or attempts to match the environment, sort of like the reflective LCD panel does. So it's something in between, something that we haven't seen actually previously, and I think it's an interesting one to check out. Full-on disclosure regarding the Eazeye. First of all, this unit has been sent to me, but this is a pre-production unit because this is not in production yet. So some things may be different or improved or changed between the unit that I have here for review and the one that potential buyers may receive. This is not a sponsored video, so my content is fully independent, and the monitor, once I'm done with it, goes back to the manufacturer or to the next reviewer in line. The second thing that I think is really important to mention here is that this is a crowd-funded project that's going to be crowd-funded on Indiegogo only, not Kickstarter as well, just Indiegogo, and then it's going to supposed to go into full-on production. However, this is a crowdfunding project by a very small team that hasn't produced anything before. So even though the production sample is here and they are assuring me that the production line is ready and everything's going to be fine, you need to be aware that, first of all, I am not endorsing this product at all. I'm simply going to review it and give you the facts. That's it. Second of all, I can't give you a recommendation should you do this, should you put a pre-order or not, for a very simple reason. Even though we do have a pre-production sample here and the assurances are made by the manufacturer and everything, even with the best intentions, we've seen that once a production is ramped up, especially now in the Q4, small and inexperienced teams, the crowdfunding projects, they inherently carry quite a big risk. So that is something that I will never endorse, and that is something that I will never be able to say, hey, go and do this. The only reason why I'm covering this is that it's an interesting product and it's something that I think people might be interested in, but please keep this last one very well in mind, that any Indiegogo or any crowdfunding project in itself, no matter how tempting it may be, carries inherent risk. So with that in mind, let's move forward. Right, so this is the Eazeye or Eazeye 24-inch transmittant wide LED gamut range computer monitor. So this is not a reflective LCD, this is a regular LCD or LED, with the main difference that, it's actually a transmissive monitor. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that right off the bat, you will notice that there's something very odd about this screen, and that means that the back panel is on these hinges in the back. There's two hinges here that allow it to go down all the way and a little bit up. And actually, because it's on hinges, you can fully remove the back panel in its entirety. When you do that, what actually is being exposed is simply a backlight here that is being used, and there is a switch here that can turn the backlight on and off. But most importantly, this is a transmissive surface here, which means that any light that is coming through from the back of the panel, not from the front, but from the back of the panel, will be used to illuminate the LEDs here in the display itself. This is made possible because of a unique construction of this screen, which means that traditionally the electronics and everything is placed on the back of the screen because it's not being used. However, because of the entire concept of this screen, all of the electronics and everything of the screen is actually contained in the bottom, so that it can allow for that transmissive kind of operations, right? So the idea behind this screen is that it's something of a hybrid, because it does have a backlight, right? So it definitely has a backlight, but it is a non-flickering type of a backlight, so that's also a good part. And also it is not a standard LED, it doesn't use standard cells, it's using a wide range LEDs in its screen. Traditional screens in your laptop and your computer screens and your TV, all of them, they use narrow bandwidth LEDs, which produce quite a lot of a spike in that harmful blue spectrum of the light. This is not true of the wide range LEDs which are used by the Eazeye. So that means that the image that you see will be less harmful and will have less of a blue light peak, and despite it actually being a backlit device as well, if you so choose. Now let's put this back. So that's the idea behind the Eazeye. Now, as far as the screen itself, like in display monitor properties goes, well, it's a fairly limited kind of affair. There's no USB whatsoever, so you can't use it as a USB hub. You have a VGA output, and you have a single HDMI, which doesn't have any dust cover here. And yeah, as you can see, the electronics here are exposed, and that's not really a good thing to kind of see, because in the long term, that's a huge kind of entrance of dust and potential gunk or whatever it may be. Then you have the power here. As far as the power goes, you get the power adapter. And while we're talking about the power, this is a very, very economical device, because I believe it uses without the backlight. So if you're using the fully on transmittance type of properties of this panel, then it's using only 4 watts. And if it's backlit, then it's up to 14 watts, but definitely a low power consumption device no matter what you choose. The power adapter looks like this. I received in the testing package, I received the adapter for the EU standard as well. But there's the same problem that we had with the SVD, and that is that the power cable is only 1.5 meters long, and that is way, way too short for any screen, especially for a screen of this type. Because, for example, I tried to use this on my regular table. And this is a table that can rise to a standing position and to a sitting position. This one actually is so short that it couldn't reach the floor to be plugged into the floor from the middle of the desk down to the floor to be plugged in its sitting down position, let alone when it actually rises up. So that forces me to basically use the additional power strip so that I can put that on the table and then plug it in. Completely unnecessary. So and that's for normal use. And when you have a special case monitor like this, which means that you will probably want to reposition it or maybe have flexibility to position it where you wanna, that power length, cable length is even more important. So I don't understand why that is the case, but it is short, and you have to think about that. On the back panel, you also have the OSD screen instruction or command panel, so you can adjust your brightness, gamma, color, profile, contrast, and all of that kind of stuff. And that works pretty much okay. Not all of them are super usable, but the OSD is intuitive, and it is something that actually can be used normally. The screen is equipped with a very, very bad stand. So the way that this works is it's a stand that is not height adjustable. You can't rotate it, and the only thing that you can do is a 15-degree tilt to the back, and that's it. So that's all there is. Now, why do I say that it's of a very, very bad? Well, just look at the amount of wobbliness. So if I just even slightly do something and I'm typing on the table, or I do something, the monitor is constantly either micro shaking or shaking quite a lot. So the design of that, the whole problem is the way that this hinge actually works. It has like a magnetic little strip that you take out, and then this whole thing goes away. But the fitting is just really, really loose. And this whole thing, while it is kind of nice that you have a magnetic fitting, sure, maybe as an idea, but if my end result is I'm holding the stand now firmly, and that you actually have this kind of wobbliness in all directions, that's not really good. As far as the layout goes, I only forgot to mention that this button here, there's a physical button that turns on and off the backlight. That's this one here. The main difference between any other screen is of course this back panel, and this back panel is just a plastic piece here that has like carbon fiber print on the back, and it does have a couple of magnets here and here which kind of are designed to stick the panel back into place. However, there's a bit of an issue here with the hinges, at least for me, because there's like two hinges in the back, and that's how this whole thing works, because it kind of opens up, and it opens up quite a lot. So you do have to consider having the availability of the back here. That's something that definitely has to be taken into account. The thing that I've noticed is that while the hinges were fairly new and not really worked out, I was experiencing that the pressure from the hinges was way too much, and the magnets would simply not hold, and this would automatically just open up even at the slightest touch. However, what I've noticed is that once I've worked out those hinges, which means, you know, a couple of cycles of going down and up and down and up, that actually made the hinges a little bit more flexible, and then the magnets are starting to work mostly in pretty much most of the situations now are fine, and I can do whatever I want with the screen without the back popping off. So that's something to also keep in mind if you get this kind of screen and you notice that the back is popping off. We'll just work those hinges and they will get to a better place. What I do like with the front panel is that we have a very nice and thin bezel here, and the construction feels like it's metal. Yeah, this is metal. So all of this is a nice metal construction, and the reflectivity of the screen is really good. So unlike the SVD reflective LCD panels, where reflections of the panel itself were the main concern, this is me actually pointing it directly into the window, and you can see that all of this is kind of muted. This is the ring light on the side. You can just see how well the reflections are being muted down. And for anyone who watched the SVD reflective LCD panel review, you would probably remember that you could actually see the reflection of the camera up in the screen while I was doing the top-down shots, which most definitely is not the case here. So that's a very good good thing to see. So even though the stand is really wobbly and kind of bleh, the build quality and the materials used entirely are actually quite cool, because the stand is metal, the framing here is all metal. The only plastic bit is this panel on the back, but that is working fine, and the reflectivity of the screen is really good as well. So overall build quality and the design is, I believe, mostly good. The only things that definitely are not that good is, as I said, the stand mechanism, and this whole thing really not good. Hopefully they'll improve that before massive production. And also I do not like the fact that there is no dust covering here, and that we can see the board exposed over time. There's going to be dust accumulation, and that is a potential point of failure in the design itself. Alright, so that is the overview of the Eazeye, and while that's all nice, now you know what we're talking about, but the whole point is actually to see what does it compare and how does it work in different conditions. So I went through a different set of examples. So I'm just going to go and show you a compilation of different comparative results with my laptop in video, browsing, and a video game settings in different lighting and environment conditions. So the idea is that with those conditions that you can actually see, comparative ones, it's something that you can at least give you an optimal kind of footage, so that you can get an idea of how the Eazeye is performing. Now, the one thing that I am not going to be doing is what the Eazeye has been showing on their examples, and that is what they would really like for this monitor to do is have it like the Backlit, like around 45-degree angle, and have a top-down light that shines on this surface so that it reflects onto here, so that it can illuminate the screen and allow transmittance for it. That is an extremely unusual scenario, and that is something that's a very, very custom type of a situation, and that's not something that people are going to normally have. What I'm going to be testing it is in normal conditions, normal well-lit conditions, with the window to the side from here. I'm going to be turning the screen and putting it against the window without the back panel, naturally, because the back panel then will, there's no point in having a back panel, because then you have the whole window as a transmittance to actually show how that works. And I'm going to be showing it also with the blinds taken down in dark conditions, so that you can see how it actually compares. And also slight variations with the brightness levels, so that you can see how it performs at certain brightness level and another brightness level as well, with the backlight, of course, turned on. All right, so that's basically the examples and all of the stuff regarding the Eazeye monitor. Before I give you my own personal impression and opinion, first the objective conclusion, and as usual, let's start with the cons. And I would start with the first con is the stand itself. It is extremely limited with no height adjustability, no rotation adjustability, and only 15-degree tilt adjustability. And furthermore, the actual wobbliness and the whole mechanism with the magnetic strip and everything is just not something that I can characterize as a positive. The whole hinge system, I get it why they've made it, but if I'm completely honest, that feels more like a do-it-yourself, DIY project and an example than a product that is coming off of a production line. So while it does work, it's very, very homemade, and as such it has some issues such as the hinges not fully going back and the magnets not fully kind of holding it and all that kind of stuff. The included power supply has a 1.5 meter long or short cable, which is not enough to accommodate the screen in any kind of regular situation, let alone a monitor that needs to be kind of made in and then placed into a special kind of situation and things like that. And I honestly don't understand why do manufacturers save money on that. It can't accommodate a raising and sinking table at all, so yeah, way too short, illogically short. There's only one HDMI port, and that one is actually allows quite a bit of an opening into the circuit boards for the dust and gunk and foreign material to actually come into direct contact with the electronics, with the heart of the monitor, and that is in the long term, that's a bad thing. There's no USB hub in the monitor itself. The color representation will depend on the environmental light conditions that you have, and also it will never be able to reach a full-on white pixel, right? So all of the stuff that you will see, all of the content that you will see on the Eazeye will always have a tint of some sort. Now, this in itself is not, I would not characterize that as a negative, because that tint is very, very pleasant, as you've probably seen. However, what that means is that this is definitely a con for those who work in departments where the color dependency and color accuracy is high. So if you are dependent on the color accuracy display and color consistency display, because colors will change depending on the lighting conditions, then this monitor will not be able to deliver the stuff for you. However, and this will be a con. However, if not, then yeah, that's a different story. I will repeat it again here. For me, it's an inherent con. Anything that's a crowd-funded project, especially if it's a crowd-funded project that's the first one from a very, very small team, regardless of how good things look like, that is going to be a orange flag of being very, very cautious and definitely a con to consider. And ultimately, you have to consider the price, whether or not it's a pro and a con. In this case, it's going to be a pro and a con, and the con is $549 for a crowdfunding project where you're not really entirely sure when you're going to get, what you're going to get, and how the delivery is going to go. Probably it's going to go fine, but you don't have any assurances. That's how the crowdfunding works. You don't get return money, you don't get anything if things go bad. However, even if things go well with $549, you're still going to pay a $549 for a 24-inch 1080p 60 Hz screen that can do things differently, and it can definitely offer one thing that's really, really different and really, really cool if you place it directly behind a light source such as a window. Then it does really special things that no other devices can do, but it's still $549. So it really is something that you have to kind of consider. Are the pros and cons of this device worth it to you or not? And now on to the pros of the Eazeye monitor. And the first one, that easiest one to actually put as a pro, is the low power consumption with 4 watts without the backlight and 14 watts with the backlight for a device that is a consumer, because usually a monitor works for hours and hours of each and every day of the year. I think that the screen size is good. One of the things that was a problem, and it is a problem with the SVDs, reflective LCDs, that it's a 32-inch panel. That's really large, and it can't fit easily into every space. The 24-inch might be a tad on the too small size if this is a success and people are happy with it. I think that the 27-inch would also make quite a lot of sense. Maybe 1440p 27-inch, that would be a really good thing. But with the 1080p, I think 24-inch 1080p, it's a nice fit that will fit most of the users who would actually look at a screen of this type. Unlike an RLCD, the Eazeye can actually work in dark conditions, and surprisingly, it thrives in dark conditions. It actually works quite nicely in such low light conditions. Overall, the image quality, I think, is quite acceptable and very, very pleasant. It has a warm tone to it. It has this nice softness to it, not mushiness, but very nice and pleasant type of experience. And for most use case scenarios, this screen will produce satisfactory results. That is, unless you are, as I mentioned in the cons, depending on color consistency and accuracy. The backlight is flicker free, so that's definitely a positive. It has overall a lot of health benefits by giving you an adjustment level of how much blue light will you have, how much brightness level will you have, how much it is going to blend with the environmental light and the backlight, depending on how you set these things up. So quite a lot of health beneficial components to consider when you're kind of balancing it out against a traditional LCD or LED or OLED display. The wide spectrum LEDs, or the natural spectrum LEDs that are used on this panel, are quite different and offer quite a different comfort level than what we are used to, which are your screens, tablets, monitors, laptops, and pretty much all the devices are using narrow bandwidth LEDs, which have that spike, the blue spike, and very characteristic blue spike. That is necessary to produce a pure white, right? So you have to have that. The natural wide one, it can't really produce a pure white, but then again, if that's not what you're looking for, and that's an okay compromise for you, then the comfort level and everything that goes in hand with the wide spectrum LEDs is a really, really nice thing to experience. And it feels like, I don't know what it feels like. Definitely, if you put it like against the window and you take the back off, then it's like an illuminated piece of paper, and it's really, really cool. Very, very pleasant to read. Then again, if you put it in the corner and you use the backlight, then it's like a very nice warm tinted, mild LED screen, which again gives you very nice results, unless again you are looking for pitch perfect black, pitch perfect white, and you are looking for color consistency and accuracy. So if those things are not something that you're like super dependent on, then definitely the Eazeye and this technology provides some very, very high levels of comfort. All right, so those are the objective pros and cons. One thing that I would also I was reluctant if I should add this as a con or not, because it really depends on the environmental conditions that you give it. But there's like a specific situation where the brief that this screen is supposed to hit, which is much better and improved visibility in natural light conditions, that needs to come with an asterisk. And that asterisk is only if the natural light source is coming from behind the screen. When it's coming from the front, then this screen really surprised me by how badly it performed. Because when I placed it in the regular situation, desk, and to the right side is a big window with natural light source, right? Even if I crank up the backlight to 100% on this screen, it's barely usable and barely visible. It's extremely pale, and there's nothing that I could actually do to make it properly usable under those conditions. The only thing that would help it would be to do the 45-degree kind of tilt, and if I would place like an artificial light source that beams a ton of really, really high light that goes onto that white surface and then reflects it into the screen so that it transmits it back to me. Then again, you're transmitting yes, reflected, but you're transmitting, again, potentially harmful blue light from that light source, and that defies the purpose. So what really surprised me was that this device, it has a notch basically of its usability. In dark conditions, semi-lit conditions, and half-lit conditions, it performs really, really well because the backlight, works perfectly fine, and with the combination of your light source, you can actually create something that works great. On the other hand, if you turn it against or back to the window, for example, or a high source of natural light, and you take the back panel off, again, performs extremely well. Way, way better than anything an LCD or an LED screen can do. But then you get this notch here, and unfortunately that notch for me is the most common use case scenario, which is high brightness in a naturally lit room, and the monitor not being against the window, with the back against the window, then the visibility was actually quite poor. And that is a surprise. So if I had this, I enjoyed using it most in those two extremes. Back against the window, no back, with the back panel off, and in a dark condition and darkened room, I really, really enjoyed using this. But in a normal, regular conditions, not so much. And that's why I wanted to put that as a very separate point on its own, because it's definitely something that has to be taken into consideration quite a lot. All right, so my subjective impression of this, well, I think it's interesting. Do I think that it's worth $549? Only if you can give it the optimal results. And it's pretty much the same thing like with the SVD reflective LCD. If you can give it the optimal results, so you can actually move your table so it's up against the window, that the window is, that you're looking through the window, and just in front of the window you have the screen, then you will be able to get the maximum out of this panel. And those $549 if the product gets made and delivered, because it's a Kickstarter thing or Indiegogo kind of thing, then I think it is something that will provide you with results that you cannot get elsewhere, and they're quite nice. However, if you are thinking, hey, I can just chuck my old monitor out and put this one and replace it and have all of the benefits that it needs, or that it carries with it, well, remember that notch, where in certain situations and in certain conditions, yes, this will be true, but I'm afraid that in a majority of situations, in regular kind of setups, that's not going to be true, and that you will need to rearrange things to accommodate this new piece of technology so that you can get the maximum out of it. So if you want like hassle-free replacement screen that just gives you a lot of stuff instantly, then you probably won't be happy with $549. But if you're willing to adapt to it, then maybe yes. But objectively, for me, I think that for $549, I would have expected to have seen a much better stand options, much better, kind of sturdiness, because it's really loose right now. Maybe that's going to be fixed in the final products, but not for this one. That's what I have to review. And I would have expected to have seen at least 2 HDMI inputs, and that they are dust cap kind of covered, so that you don't see the naked circuitry board open there, exposed to all of the dust, gunk, and things like that that can accumulate over the years and cause damage. So yeah, overall, an interesting product, interesting approach to existing technology, and an existing merger of existing technologies. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed immensely using it against the window. That's a full-on new experience. That's really cool. The other stuff was also okay. As I said, in the darkened conditions, I really enjoyed that as well. Very pleasant to look at, but unfortunately this is not something that I would be able to use. And if I were to purchase this, I wouldn't be happy with this, and I wouldn't be able to use it, because that would mean that I would have to rearrange my entire room just to accommodate the screen, and that's not how my setup is. And that's not what my needs are. So my specific needs are, for my subjective needs and my subjective case scenario, is that I need a piece of technology that can slot into my existing setup. And unfortunately, same as reflective LCD panel wasn't able to do that for me from the SVD panel, it's the same thing with this one as well. I can't slot it into my everyday scenario. However, if you can, this is definitely an interesting piece of technology that you might want to check out and see if it's the right one for you or not. I hope that you found the video interesting and useful. If you did, please like and subscribe and ding the notification bell in the description down below to get notified when new videos come out on My Deep Guide. Also, I invite you to check out mydeepguide.com/shop, where you can find MDO, which is your yearly, quarterly, monthly, daily, weekly organizer for all of your professional or personal needs. And you can find the My Deep Guide meeting planner, which is again a hyperlinked PDF file, same as the MDO is, that will help you simplify, centralize, and organize all of your meeting planning needs. You can find the links in the description down below to their dedicated playlists, and yeah, there you can find tons of information to see if these products are right for you or not. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye.